The grand chamber of the Galactic Council was glowing with light. Thousands of crystal mirrors reflected the soft golden hue of the stars outside. Representatives from hundreds of alien civilizations sat in their places, their faces calm, their voices low, waiting for the meeting to begin. The air was thick with formality and quiet pride. This hall had seen the rise and fall of empires, the signing of peace treaties, and the birth of alliances that shaped the galaxy. But today something different was about to happen. The Council was preparing to witness a live broadcast from a small blue planet that had recently joined the interstellar community, Earth. Humans had entered the galactic stage only a few years ago. To most of the ancient races, they were still new, unpredictable, and strange. They smiled too often, spoke too passionately, and their eyes carried a kind of intensity that made others uncomfortable. The older species, who had known peace for centuries, often whispered that humans were too emotional to survive long among the stars. Some even believed that humans would eventually destroy themselves. But there were a few who admired them, their courage, their creativity, their unyielding will. The council chamber buzzed softly as the broadcast began. The main screen flickered, showing the bright image of Earth's flag waving over a distant colony on the edge of the Orion Belt. It was a developing world, newly built and full of life. The colony's atmosphere shimmered with blue light from the nearby nebula, and children played in the open fields beneath protective domes. Human engineers were laughing together as they worked on solar towers, and soldiers in white armor stood guard with relaxed expressions. Everything looked peaceful, normal, calm. The council members leaned back in their seats. To them, this was just another broadcast, another routine progress report. They expected polite speeches, maybe a few numbers about resource growth, and a formal ending with the usual human smile and words of friendship. The humans had always been like that, eager to impress, eager to be liked. Many of the older alien leaders looked down quietly, their eyes showing polite boredom. The council speaker, a tall, silver-skinned being named Valor, adjusted the controls and addressed the audience in his deep, echoing voice. "We welcome today's transmission from the human colony of Epsilon Prime. Let this remind us of the unity among all intelligent life in our galaxy." The room filled with light applause, soft, measured, emotionless. Then the broadcast shifted to the human representative. It was a young woman with brown eyes and a calm smile. Her name was Captain Ilara Voss, the commander overseeing the colony's security. She spoke with warmth and respect, thanking the council for their support, sharing how much progress had been made. Her voice carried sincerity, and for a few moments, even the most skeptical alien leaders felt a quiet admiration. Humanity, it seemed, was finally fitting in. As Ilara continued speaking, the screen showed glimpses of daily life, workers eating together, families planting trees, scientists studying local plants, and children learning under open skies. There was a beauty in it all, a raw simplicity that most advanced races had forgotten long ago. Humanity still lived with feeling, still cared deeply, still believed in something beyond logic. But deep inside, there was always a sense of tension when humans were discussed. Many remembered their history, the endless wars, the rise and fall of nations, their strange need to fight and rebuild again. The galaxy had seen humans show compassion beyond understanding, but also fury beyond reason. That duality made them dangerous in ways others couldn't define. As the broadcast continued, the council's interest began to fade. One of the counselors, a reptilian elder from the Draken Empire, whispered, "They are still children, playing in the dust of their little worlds." Another nodded in agreement. Yes, too much heart, too little control. A few laughed softly, certain that humanity's fire would one day burn itself out. But as fate would have it, that day would prove them all wrong. Captain Ilara paused mid-sentence. Something changed in her expression. The calm smile faded. Her eyes flicked to someone off-screen, and the sound around her shifted. A distant rumble echoed through the speakers. Then another. The camera shook slightly. She turned her head sharply and spoke into her communicator, her tone suddenly sharp and commanding. The council room went silent. "What's happening?" Valor asked, his silver eyes narrowing. The broadcast feed began to crackle. Behind Ilara, smoke appeared on the horizon. The once peaceful colony was no longer calm. Sirens started to wail faintly through the transmission. The humans on screen were running, shouting, securing equipment. The council members leaned forward in their seats, confusion spreading like a wave. Alara's voice returned, but it was no longer soft and diplomatic. It was firm, steady, cold. "This is Captain Voss. We are under attack. Unknown vessels entering orbit. Civilian evacuation in progress." The camera turned, showing the sky above the colony darkening as strange shadows moved across it. Small flashes of light streaked down. Bombs, missiles, plasma shots. The council chamber filled with gasps. One of the alien leaders stood up, her body trembling. Who would dare attack a human colony under council protection? No one answered. Within seconds, the screen filled with chaos. Explosions tore through the outer walls. The peaceful fields were engulfed in fire, and the blue glow of the nebula turned red with smoke. People ran for shelter. Soldiers rushed into defensive positions. The council hall echoed with alarmed voices in 100 different languages. And yet, amid that chaos, there was something strange. The humans didn't scream. They didn't beg. They didn't panic. Captain Alara's voice came through the noise again, giving orders with precision. Her tone was calm, almost emotionless now. "Alpha teams, secure the southern dome. Beta, fall back to the command tower. Civilians first. Move fast." The council watched in disbelief. Most races, when attacked, lost order immediately. But humans, they adapted instantly. There was no delay between fear and action. It was like watching a machine suddenly come alive. For the first time, the council saw not the smiling diplomats, not the emotional dreamers, but something older, deeper, and far more dangerous. They saw focus. They saw silence. They saw the moment when humanity's peaceful mask began to crack, and something primal stirred behind their eyes. The screen flickered again, showing human ships launching from the colony's docks. Their engines roared, disappearing into the smoke-filled sky. The feed briefly showed the attackers, dark, spiked ships belonging to a race known as the Krithar Dominion, infamous for enslaving new worlds. The council members began to shout, demanding to contact the Krithar ambassador, but no one could stop the ongoing broadcast. It was live, raw, and real. And there, right in front of the galaxy's most powerful leaders, humanity changed. The council chamber had fallen silent. The only sound was the distant rumble of war coming from the broadcast. The alien representatives looked at each other with unease. The calm they once felt was gone. Something was happening. Something that would make them question everything they believed about humans. Captain Alara looked directly into the camera one last time. Her brown eyes, once filled with warmth, now carried a cold determination. She didn't ask for help. She didn't cry for mercy. Her voice came through clear and steady. "Transmission will continue. The council needs to see." Then the image cut to the battlefield. The council members, sitting in their polished seats under the golden mirrors, suddenly realized they were witnessing something no one had ever seen before, the awakening of humanity's predator side. And though they didn't yet understand it, history had just changed forever. The broadcast screens across the Galactic Council chamber glowed with static for a few seconds before the image cleared. The peaceful colony that everyone had seen moments ago was now in flames. Smoke rose high into the darkening sky, and flashes of light cut through the air like lightning. The camera trembled as if the world itself was shaking. The sound of explosions echoed through the speakers, followed by the screams of frightened civilians running for shelter. Every council member leaned forward, their faces filled with confusion and fear. They could not believe what they were seeing. The Krithar Dominion, one of the most feared warlike races, had launched a surprise attack on a human colony. The Krithar ships looked like sharp black claws tearing through the clouds, firing plasma strikes into the ground below. For the Council, it was unthinkable. The human colony was under the protection of the Galactic Treaty. No one dared to attack such a world. But now everyone could see the truth. The Krithar had chosen war. Captain Alara Voss stood at the command tower, her face lit by red emergency lights. Around her, alarms blared and officers shouted coordinates, yet she didn't panic. Her voice was calm, steady, and sharp. "Evacuate the northern sectors first. Get the children and families to the underground shelters. All military personnel report to defense stations immediately." Her tone was cold but focused, like someone who had done this before. Outside the window, soldiers were already running through the chaos. They moved quickly, helping civilians to safety, guiding them toward the bunkers built under the colony's main dome. Every soldier carried determination in their eyes. There was fear, yes, but behind it was something stronger. The broadcast switched between different cameras showing scenes from across the colony. A family clutching each other as a soldier carried their little boy to safety. Engineers turning their maintenance vehicles into makeshift rescue transports. Doctors setting up emergency stations even as bombs exploded nearby. The entire human settlement had come alive, each person doing their part. From the council seats, the alien delegates whispered among themselves. "They are still standing?" asked one in disbelief. "Even under this kind of fire?" Valor, the silver-skinned council leader, looked closer at the feed. "Look at their eyes," he said quietly. "They're not running from the battle. They're preparing for it." He was right. In the control center, Alara received a call from the orbital defense team. "Captain, enemy ships are entering the atmosphere. Estimated contact in 3 minutes. "Understood," she replied. Her fingers danced across the console. "Activate automated turrets. Deploy drone squadrons 1 through 6. Target anything entering civilian airspace." "Yes, ma'am." The council watched in silence as the sky above the colony turned into a battlefield. Human defense drones shot upward like silver sparks, meeting the black ships of the Krethar with a storm of light. Explosions lit up the night, painting the sky with fire. The camera focused on a group of Krethar warships descending in formation, their plasma cannons glowing green. But before they could strike again, the human defense grid activated. Hundreds of laser turrets hidden beneath the colony's outer walls came to life. They fired in synchronized precision, cutting through the enemy ships with blinding accuracy. Within seconds, 2 of the Krethar vessels exploded mid-air, raining debris across the landscape. The council members gasped. "Impossible," one shouted. "They shouldn't have this kind of technology." Another voice, filled with awe, whispered, "No, it's not the machines. It's how they use them." Down on the ground, the human soldiers fought with brutal coordination. Every squad moved as if guided by a single mind. They didn't shout or argue. They communicated in short, direct words, calm, focused, controlled. In one corner of the broadcast, a group of Krethar soldiers landed near the colony's eastern dome. They were twice as tall as humans, covered in black armor, with glowing red eyes and clawed weapons. The council watched, expecting the humans to fall back. But instead they saw something else, something that made the entire room fall silent. A human squad of only 6 soldiers rushed forward to meet them. They moved low and fast, their faces expressionless. The leader, a man named Sergeant Kane, raised his hand once, signaling silently. Without a word, they surrounded the enemy and opened fire in perfect rhythm. The Krethar roared, charging forward, but the humans didn't flinch. They used cover, rolled between blasts, and struck back with deadly precision. Within moments, the massive Krethar fell, one after another. When it was over, Sergeant Kane lifted his helmet, his face streaked with dust and sweat. He didn't celebrate. He just said quietly into his communicator, "Sector clear," proceeding to next. In the council hall, there was silence. No one dared speak. Captain Alara's voice came through the speakers again. "Report. Southern Dome is secure. Western evac complete," answered one officer. "Good. Focus all artillery on grid point D7. Push them back from the riverbed." Even as she gave orders, her gaze turned to the main screen in her command room. It showed the map of the colony filled with red and blue lights, enemy and ally signals. For every human casualty, 10 Krethar fell. Yet there was no joy in her eyes. Only a deep, cold purpose. The camera zoomed out, showing the full scale of the battle. Smoke and fire covered the colony. Dozens of enemy ships circled above like vultures, but the humans refused to surrender. The council delegates sat frozen. For centuries, wars among the galactic races were clean, mechanical, and emotionless. Robots fought instead of living soldiers. But this was different. The humans fought with emotion, and yet that emotion was not chaos. It was fuel. A soft, trembling voice broke the silence in the council hall. It belonged to an elder alien scholar who had studied humanity for decades. "Do you see it now?" he whispered. "This is what makes them dangerous. They don't fight because they love war. They fight because they refuse to lose what they love." No one answered him. They were all watching too closely. The broadcast cut back to the surface, showing civilians now fully evacuated. Many of them refused to leave completely. Some were helping carry ammunition, others distributing water and supplies to soldiers. Even children handed out medical packs with trembling hands. It was no longer just a military operation. It was an act of unity. In the midst of the chaos, Alara received another report. "Captain, orbital fleet is ready. We're awaiting your signal." She looked up at the sky. Through the cracked windows of the command tower, she could see the faint glow of Earth's defense ships arriving. Massive steel vessels entered the atmosphere, their engines blazing blue. They looked like angels made of fire. Alara gave the order. "Engage." The sound that followed shook even the council chamber light years away. Human warships unleashed their full power. Plasma cannons, railguns, and guided missiles streaked across the void, hitting the Krithar fleet with devastating precision. The invaders tried to retreat, but the humans didn't allow it. They pressed forward with cold determination, not in rage, but in control. The Krithar flagship, realizing the battle was lost, attempted to escape. But one of the human destroyers cut across its path, blocking its route. The two ships collided in a blinding explosion that lit the sky like a second sun. The council members shielded their eyes as the light reflected across the room. When the image cleared, all that was left were pieces of burning debris falling into the ocean below. Alara lowered her head for a brief moment, whispering something no one could hear. Then she turned to her officers. "Keep the transmission going," she ordered. "Let them see what happens when humanity is attacked." The broadcast continued. The Krithar ships were gone or destroyed. The colony, though damaged, still stood. Human rescue teams began pulling survivors from the wreckage. The wounded were treated, the dead were covered with flags, and the soldiers stood in silent lines, their weapons still in hand. Back in the council hall, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, like the air after a storm. Some looked shocked, others terrified. A few looked humbled. They had seen many wars, but never like this. Never so human. One council member finally broke the silence. They fought without hesitation, no fear, no mercy. Phalor nodded slowly, his silver eyes thoughtful. "No," he said softly. "Not without mercy. They fought because they had to. But when they fight, they become something else entirely." No one disagreed. What the council had witnessed was more than a battle. It was a revelation. Humanity, once seen as emotional and weak, had shown its other face. The side born from centuries of struggle and survival. The side that didn't wait for permission, that didn't hide behind politics. The predator side that awakened only when pushed to the edge. And as the smoke cleared over the ruined colony, one truth echoed through every heart watching that broadcast. Humanity might love peace, but they were built for war when peace was broken. The night sky above the human colony was burning with fire. The smoke still rose high like black waves, and the ground trembled under the weight of explosions. But the humans were no longer defending. Now they were hunting. The moment of fear had passed. What replaced it was something colder, sharper, and terrifyingly calm. The council broadcast continued without pause. Every alien leader watching the live transmission in stunned silence. What they saw on the screens was not chaos anymore. It was strategy, precision, and vengeance wrapped in control. Human fleets from nearby stations had arrived, moving through space like a silent storm. Their ships were dark gray, their engines burning with blue fire, leaving trails of light behind them. The Krithar Dominion, once confident in their attack, now found themselves surrounded by human warships that moved with terrifying coordination. The council had expected emotional retaliation, rage, confusion, and wild destruction, but instead they saw something different. The humans were methodical. They spoke few words, moved in perfect rhythm, and attacked with mathematical accuracy. In the command center of the flagship Horizon Spear, Admiral Ryan Holt stood tall, his expression unreadable. His crew worked around him in complete focus, their voices calm despite the chaos outside. "Target Alpha 3 cruiser," Holt ordered. "Minimum power. Disable, not destroy." His second-in-command hesitated for a moment. "Sir, why not finish them? They attacked civilians." The Admiral looked at him with eyes that held both steel and sorrow. "Because they need to understand," he said quietly. "We will not become monsters, but they will remember what happens when we are forced to fight." The order was carried out immediately. The ship's main cannon fired a single pulse of white energy that struck the enemy cruiser with perfect aim. The Krithar vessel went dark, its weapons silenced, its engines dead. The human fleet didn't cheer. They simply moved on to the next target, On the ground, the human soldiers had turned from defense to counterattack. The survivors of the colony stood side by side with military units, reclaiming what was lost. Smoke covered the ruins, but the humans moved through it like shadows, silent, determined, unbreakable. They didn't scream, didn't boast. Their faces were empty, their movements mechanical. Every alien watching the broadcast could sense it. Something primal had taken control, something that didn't need words. A Krythar battalion tried to regroup near the colony's outskirts. They roared and shouted in their native tongue, filled with arrogance and rage. To them, humans were weak, emotional creatures. But within minutes, they learned how wrong they were. A group of human commandos appeared from the smoke, wearing black armor, their visors glowing faintly blue. They didn't rush forward or attack wildly. They moved with chilling precision, one soldier giving a signal with 2 fingers, the rest spreading out like wolves surrounding prey. In seconds, they struck. Not one wasted bullet, not one unnecessary move. The Krythar fell before they could even react. The entire scene was being recorded by drones, transmitted live to the Council's main chamber. The alien representatives sat in silence, their eyes wide. They had seen wars before, massive, bloody conflicts that lasted years, but never this kind of controlled fury. Humanity wasn't just fighting, they were teaching. At one point, a Krythar officer tried to surrender. The human soldier, his weapon still raised, paused. He looked at the alien for a long, tense moment before lowering his gun. "You live," he said coldly. "Tell them what you saw here." Then he turned and walked away without another word. The Krythar officer fell to his knees, shaking. Back in the council chamber, the silence grew heavier with every passing minute. The more they watched, the more they understood that humans were unlike any species they had ever known. The reptilian ambassador from the Draken Empire leaned back, his scales twitching nervously. "They're not fighting for glory," he muttered. "They're fighting for meaning." Valor, the silver-skinned council leader, didn't respond. He simply stared at the screens, his reflection glowing in the mirror walls of the chamber. He could see the difference now. Humans didn't kill because they wanted to. They killed because something inside them refused to be broken. As the battle continued, the human fleet tightened its formation, surrounding the last of the Krythar ships. There was no escape. The enemy fleet fired desperately, but every shot was intercepted. The humans responded with quiet precision, disabling the ships one by one. On board one of the enemy vessels, the Krythar commander screamed into his communicator, his voice filled with disbelief. "They are only one world, and yet they fight like 1,000. His aide, trembling beside him, whispered, "They don't fight like warriors. They fight like something older." The human response came soon after. The Horizon Spear opened a communication channel to all enemy ships. Admiral Holt appeared on their screens, his voice steady. "This is the United Earth Fleet. You attacked our people without cause. You slaughtered civilians, you broke the peace. This battle is over. Surrender now and you will live. Resist and we will end you." The Krythar commander hesitated, his pride fighting against his fear. He had faced many races before, but none like this. The humans weren't screaming, weren't threatening. Their calmness was worse than anger. It was the calm of a predator who already knew the outcome. The commander finally gave the order to retreat. His ships tried to turn away, but the humans had already anticipated it. Within seconds, a wall of energy fields trapped the Krythar fleet inside. "Do not mistake mercy for weakness," Admiral Holt said quietly before cutting the transmission. The humans disabled the remaining ships with stunning precision, leaving them drifting in silence. Then, without any celebration, the fleet began helping survivors on both sides. Human medical teams even boarded damaged Krythar ships to pull out the wounded. It wasn't victory they wanted, it was understanding. On the ground, Captain Ilara stood amid the ruins of her colony. The fires had died down and the air smelled of ash and smoke. She looked around at the people she had sworn to protect, soldiers, workers, children, all alive because they refused to give up. She pressed her communicator. "Admiral Holt, colony secure. Enemy neutralized. Civilians safe." "Understood," came the reply. "Hold your position. Reinforcements are inbound." Ilara exhaled slowly, her eyes closing for a moment. Her body was tired, her armor cracked, her heart heavy, but she didn't allow herself to rest. "Keep the broadcast running," she ordered softly. "The galaxy needs to see this." Up in the council chamber, the faces of the alien representatives were pale. They had never seen such a thing before. Not the technology, not the weapons, but the way humans fought. Every race in the galaxy had evolved to avoid pain, to preserve life above all else. But humans were different. They faced pain, embraced it, and turned it into strength. The broadcast shifted once more to a view of the battlefield from space. The human ships floated in formation, silent and still, as if standing guard over their wounded world. The light from the burning planet reflected off their metal hulls, making them look like silver guardians in the dark. Valor finally stood, his voice quiet but filled with awe. They were pushed, he said, and they did not break. They adapted. They became... He paused, searching for the right word. Predators. The hall remained silent. No one argued. Every leader there knew what he meant. Humanity's predator side wasn't about cruelty or hate. It was about survival, about the unshakable instinct to protect what was theirs. The elder scholar who had once warned the council about humanity spoke again, his voice trembling with emotion. "Now you understand," he whispered. "This is why they will outlast us all. Because when their peace is taken, their hearts turn to fire." On the screens, the human fleet began to depart. The battle was over. But as the last transmission faded to black, one final image remained in every mind. The eyes of a human soldier looking straight into the camera. Calm. Cold. Alive. That gaze said everything words could not. We did not start this war. But we will finish it if we must. And across the galaxy, from the farthest star systems to the deepest council halls, one truth began to spread. Humanity was not weak, not fragile, and not foolish. They were gentle until they were forced to remember what they truly were. And once that happened, mercy disappeared and survival took control. That night, the galaxy learned the difference between a civilized species and a human being. And for the first time in centuries, even the oldest empires felt something they thought they had forgotten long ago: fear. The alien council chamber was filled with chaos and confusion. The bright lights of the interstellar broadcast flickered as the council members struggled to process what they were witnessing. For thousands of years, they had believed themselves to be the superior race, the ones who guided, ruled, and protected the balance of the galaxy. But what they saw that day changed everything. The humans, the species they had once seen as primitive, emotional, and unpredictable, had revealed something terrifying. They had shown their predator side, and it wasn't just power. They had shown control, coordination, and something beyond rage. It was intelligence mixed with fury, compassion replaced by survival instinct, and mercy replaced by precision. The alien commander Velnar sat frozen in his chair, his scaled fingers gripping the edges of the console. "They can't be serious," he whispered to himself. On the screen, a live broadcast showed the human fleets advancing through the stars, formation after formation. There was no chaos in their movement. It was too precise, too cold. "They are not fighting for resources," said another council member, voice trembling. "They're fighting because we threatened their own." The council chamber turned silent for a long moment. Only the low hum of the holographic display filled the room. Every being in that chamber knew what this meant. When humans felt fear or pain, they didn't retreat. They adapted. When they were cornered, they became something else entirely. Every world that had studied human history knew this pattern, but no one truly believed it until now. Back on Earth, the streets were quiet. Civilians were gathered around large screens, showing the same broadcast that the council was watching. Humanity's leaders stood before their people, explaining the situation. "We did not start this war," the Earth President said, her voice firm and calm. "But we will finish it if we must." The crowd erupted in a mix of fear and determination. People who had never held weapons were signing up to defend their planet. Children drew the human emblem on their hands, and old veterans dusted off their medals, ready once again to serve. On one side of the galaxy, a small team of soldiers stood aboard the Vigilant Dawn, the flagship of humanity's defense fleet. Among them was Commander Raylan, who had once believed that peace was humanity's greatest strength. But today, as he watched the alien fleet moving closer, he realized something deeper. Peace meant nothing if your enemy believed your kindness was weakness. His face hardened as he looked at his crew. "They think we're scared," he said quietly. They're about to learn what fear truly means. The soldiers didn't cheer. They didn't shout. They simply nodded, eyes focused, movements calm. The transformation was complete. They were no longer explorers or diplomats. They were predators in the purest sense, protective, silent, and merciless when threatened. In the council chamber, the alien races tried to find a way to stop what they had started. "We can call for peace," said one of the delegates, his voice trembling. "They might listen if we—" "They won't," interrupted another. "You've seen what they've become. You've pushed them too far." The broadcast switched to live footage from the battlefield. A massive human warship appeared out of hyperspace, its hull scarred but unbroken. The ship's name glowed in red letters. Resolution. The camera zoomed in as it began firing energy bursts faster than the council's sensors could track. Entire fleets disappeared under the attack. Human soldiers didn't fight with hatred, they fought with purpose. They didn't shout battle cries. They fought in silence, every move sharp and efficient. Then something happened that none of the council members expected. A message came through directly from the human fleet. It wasn't a demand for surrender nor a threat. It was a single line of transmission. "We warned you. Do not touch Earth again." The voice was calm, emotionless, but it carried a weight that made even the bravest alien officers hesitate. As the human fleets advanced, alien worlds began to surrender one after another, not because they were defeated, but because they were terrified. They realized that humans did not fight for glory or power. They fought for survival, and that made them unstoppable. They could rebuild, adapt, and learn from every mistake. They had fought each other for centuries, perfected the art of destruction, and now they had turned that mastery outward. Meanwhile, Commander Raylan stood in his ship's control room, watching the chaos unfold. He wasn't proud of what was happening, but he knew it was necessary. He turned to his second-in-command and said quietly, "Predators don't hunt for pleasure. They hunt when forced to." His words echoed through the deck as soldiers prepared for another wave. In the council chamber, panic broke. Delegates shouted over each other. "We need to cut the transmission," yelled one. "No! The galaxy must see this," argued another. But the truth was, every civilization in the galaxy was already watching. Billions of beings across countless worlds were witnessing the rise of humanity's dark side, the side that even humans themselves feared. On the screen, one of the alien admirals attempted a desperate attack, sending a barrage of plasma fire toward the human fleet. The humans didn't panic. They simply adjusted, predicted the pattern, and countered it with surgical precision. The alien ships exploded in silence, their remains drifting in the void like dust. The council members could only stare. Then, something unexpected happened. The human fleet stopped advancing. They held their position. There was no taunting, no destruction of innocent colonies. Commander Raylan ordered a ceasefire. He stood at the center of the command bridge and said, "Send them our coordinates. If they want peace, they can talk face to face." His calm tone shocked even his own crew. Back in the council chamber, the Supreme Elder stood and said in disbelief, "They stopped. They actually stopped." Silence filled the room again. Perhaps, another whispered, "There is still something human left inside them." But deep down they all knew. The predator side had not disappeared. It was only resting, waiting. Humanity had shown mercy, not weakness. They had proven that they could control their darker side. But if threatened again, the galaxy now understood what would happen. As the broadcast faded, the final image shown across the galaxy was of Earth itself, blue, fragile, yet terrifyingly powerful. A planet that had once been underestimated now stood as a warning to all. The council members sat in silence, the words of the human commander echoing in their minds. "We warned you. Do not touch Earth again." In that moment, everyone watching knew the truth. Humanity wasn't just another race in the stars. They were survivors, protectors, and predators when needed. And for the first time, the entire galaxy understood what it truly meant when humans took control. Not just of their destiny, but of their predator side. The council meeting ended, but the fear remained. Across distant planets, whispers began to spread. Some called humans monsters, others called them guardians. But one thing was certain. No one would ever underestimate Earth again. Humanity had shown that beneath their compassion and creativity, there was something ancient, something primal, something unstoppable. And once awakened, it could never be forgotten. The war had ended, but the silence that followed was heavier than the sound of battle. The stars that once glowed with beauty now seemed to watch in fear, as if even the universe itself understood what had just happened. The council chambers were empty now. The same seats where proud leaders once laughed and argued were left in ruins. The broadcast had ended, but the image of humanity's predator side stayed alive in the memories of everyone who had seen it. On Earth, the skies were calm again. Smoke no longer rose from the cities, and ships that once carried weapons now returned home with weary soldiers. Commander Raylan stood on the landing platform of the Vigilant Dawn, watching the sun rise over the horizon. It had been weeks since the final battle, but the sound of war still echoed in his mind. He had seen things that no one should ever see. Friends lost, enemies broken, and fear spreading across the stars. Yet in that stillness there was peace. Not the fragile kind that came from treaties or agreements, but the kind that came from strength. The kind earned through survival. Back in the Council's territory, the surviving members met in secrecy. Their pride was shattered and their confidence was gone. The great Council of Worlds, once the center of galactic power, now lived in quiet shame. They had been the ones who provoked humanity. They had mocked Earth's emotions, underestimated its people, and called them unstable. But now they understood that humanity's emotions were not weaknesses. They were the very source of their power. Their love gave them courage, their pain gave them endurance, and their anger gave them the will to fight beyond fear. The alien delegate, Velnar, sat alone in his dark quarters. He replayed the last human transmission again and again, the calm voice that had said, "Do not touch Earth again." There was no hate in that message, no revenge. It was pure warning, a quiet promise that the next time mercy might not follow. Velnar finally understood why the humans were feared. They were not driven by destruction like other species. They were driven by protection. When they fought, it wasn't for domination. It was for survival and justice. That realization terrified him more than any weapon ever could. On Earth, life slowly began to return to normal. Cities rebuilt. Children returned to schools, and people tried to forget the terror of the war. But deep down, everyone knew that the galaxy had changed forever. The humans were no longer seen as a small species from a blue planet. They were now known as the species that stood against an entire galactic council and survived. Every star system whispered about them. Some called them the Unbroken, others the Silent Predators. Commander Raylan was invited to speak at the United Earth Assembly. As he walked onto the stage, people from all nations stood to honor him and every soldier who had fought. His uniform was plain, marked only with a single emblem, the symbol of Earth surrounded by stars. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "We did what we had to do," he said. "We didn't fight to destroy. We fought to remind them who we are. Humanity is not perfect. We are flawed, emotional, and often divided. But when the darkness comes for us, we stand together, and that is our greatest strength." The crowd stood in silence for a moment before erupting in applause, not out of joy but out of pride. They knew what his words meant. After the ceremony, Raylan went to visit the memorial wall. Thousands of names were carved into it, men, women, and even children who had lost their lives during the invasion. He placed his hand on the cold surface and whispered, "You made them understand. Your sacrifice made them fear hurting us again." A small child nearby looked up at him and asked softly, "Will they come back?" Raylan smiled faintly. "If they do," he said, "they'll remember what happened the last time." Meanwhile, in the far corners of the galaxy, change began to spread. Some alien civilizations started reaching out to Earth not with threats but with peace offerings. They wanted to learn from humans to understand what made them strong. Scientists from distant worlds visited human universities, curious about their history and resilience. And for the first time in galactic history, Earth became not just a member of the Council, but a symbol of balance. But not everyone was at peace. Some of the alien leaders still feared that one day, the humans would lose control of their predator side again. They whispered in secret, making plans to watch humanity closely. But they all knew the truth. They would never again risk pushing them too far. Humanity had already shown what happened when the predator took control, and that memory was enough to keep entire empires quiet. Commander Raylan, however, did not live in fear. He continued to serve, but his mission was no longer about war. It was about peace through strength. He led the creation of the Terran Peace Corps, a group of humans who traveled across galaxies to help rebuild destroyed worlds, including those that once fought against Earth. When he was asked why he would help his enemies, he replied simply, "Because mercy is not weakness. Mercy is control." Years passed and the Council rebuilt itself, this time with Earth as one of its leading voices. No longer were humans seen as unpredictable or dangerous. They were respected and in many ways feared. During meetings, when arguments broke out between species, silence would often fall when a human delegate spoke. The Council had learned the hard way that humans did not make empty threats. Velnar, the alien delegate who had once doubted humanity, eventually met Commander Raylan in person. It was an uneasy meeting. Both men stood across from each other, the memory of war still between them. "I never thought I'd see this day," Velnar said. "Nor did I," Raylan replied. "But here we are." Velnar looked down and said quietly, "We feared you because we didn't understand you." Raylan nodded. "And we fought you because you forced us to show what we really are." The alien looked up, his eyes full of regret. "Do you still believe in peace?" he asked. Raylan smiled faintly. "Always. But peace needs strength. And we'll never forget that again." The two shook hands. It was not a friendly gesture, but a respectful one. The broadcast of that moment spread across the galaxy, becoming a symbol of change. The same way the galaxy had once watched humanity's fury, they now watched their forgiveness. As the years turned into decades, stories of that war became legends. Children on alien worlds grew up hearing about the humans, the predators who fought with hearts of fire but also showed mercy like none before. Some even admired them, studying their history and learning their languages. The fear slowly turned into respect and the respect into alliance. But on quiet nights, when the stars shimmered across the black sky, some of the older council members would still whisper to each other about that day, the day humanity's predator side took control. They remembered the cold precision, the silence before the attack, and the message that ended it all. They would never forget how close the galaxy had come to destruction, and how the humans had stopped just short of it. Commander Raylan retired years later, choosing to live a quiet life near the ocean. He often walked along the beach watching the waves crash against the shore, each one a reminder of life's endless rhythm, calm and storm, peace and war. One evening, a young reporter visited him and asked, "Do you think humanity has changed since then?" Raylan looked out at the horizon and said softly, "No, we haven't changed. We've just learned when to show our claws and when to keep them hidden." The reporter hesitated before asking, "Do you think the galaxy still fears us?" Raylan smiled, a tired but proud smile. "They don't fear us," he said. "They respect us, and that's better." As the sun set, its golden light spread across the water, turning the waves into rivers of fire. Somewhere beyond that sky, billions of stars watched silently. They all remembered the day humanity stood alone, when their predator side awakened not out of hate but out of love, for their home, their people, their right to exist. The Council never forgot. The galaxy never forgot, and the humans, though they returned to peace, carried that side deep within them, a reminder that they could be gentle creators or fierce defenders. They were both. They always had been. And so in every corner of the galaxy, from the smallest world to the grandest empire, one truth was now written in history forever. Humanity was not to be underestimated. For when the predator inside them took control, even the stars themselves watched in silence.